For the past few years, I've been drawing grand European architecture and street scenes using reference photos. I have a method where I first do a grid on my photo, I do a grid in the same proportions on my paper, and then I do a detailed and careful pencil underdrawing. And I use this pencil underdrawing as the basis for my ink work over the top, both the line and the tone. And this method has let me attempt very detailed drawings, confident that there was at least some chance that they would turn out looking okay after all the time they were going to need. But after a few years, I wanted to get ready to do some location sketching on my next trip. And I wanted to be able to do it this time in ink, directly into my sketchbook. But I knew that that would require a very different method. The biggest issue for me to overcome was my fear of making a mistake. We have to learn that we almost certainly won't make as many mistakes as we're afraid we will, and that the ones we do make won't be nearly as bad as we think they are. And that frees me up to take the risk. And hey, if I'm afraid of wasting the paper, I should just use cheap paper. So in the rest of this video, I'm going to do a direct ink drawing, starting with a blank sheet of paper and explaining how I plan in my head and think about what I'm going to do. So I start by choosing the part of the subject that I think is the easiest to draw accurately. So it's probably a part without too extreme a perspective. I'm choosing one of these central windows in the front of the corner of the building here because it's fairly directly shaped with the columns, and I can get the proportions easily enough. And I'm going to be using this shape to really reference the rest of the drawing that I do. So it is important to get it as accurately as possible. And it's straightforward because the bit above is about the same size, and then I put these columns in, and now I have twice as much drawing that I can reference off. And every now and then I look back and look at it big picture and just make sure that everything's reasonably correct and the proportions are reasonably correct. And now I go off to one side, and again now I'm referencing this off what I've already done. I'm being particularly careful with this side to get the foreshortening correct because this wall actually curves away from me, so we start to get that foreshortening compression happening. We'll pick the pace up a bit here, but the principle is exactly the same with the drawing. I'm using what I've already drawn as, if you like, a ruler to measure where the bits I still have to draw come. Now I'm with this left-hand side from what I started on. This is not foreshortened because this actually curves around so that it's more front on to me. So again, I make sure I capture the fact that it's wider, everything's wider for this section. And then when I go to the other extreme, it's the opposite, and I tighten the foreshortening even more. Now again, I go up and I'm paying attention that I align all the vertical elements. There's a strong vertical alignment here. And so I want to make sure that all of the windows look like they're all in a straight line, and the internal supporting columns in the windows look like they all line up as well. I also need to make sure that the little decorative elements look the same all the way across. So I tend to draw them at the same time, and I draw them the same way. Now there's a few tall lamps in the front, and I always make sure I draw those sorts of objects in before I draw what comes behind them, because I try and avoid having to draw over the top of something else. So I line up all the detail on this lower floor, what's actually the first floor in real life, because there's a street level below what I'm going to draw today. And now I switch to a lighter pen. I go from a 0.3 to a 0.2 fine liner because I want a lighter touch with these details of the building next to it. I want it to, it's more compressed, and so I have to fit more lines into the same space. So I get a finer pen just so I can get a lighter touch, and that also helps it look a bit further away, as well as letting me put a bit more detail without it looking too heavy. So I'm working that back and forth over the rest of the drawing. With this final part of our drawing, again, I'm aligning with what I've already drawn. I actually go back and align it with my original starting point, not with the parts I've just drawn, but I always sort of go back to that central part, because it's more accurate to always use the first part. That way little errors I might have made don't get larger and larger as I move across. And by this stage, it's really a lot of fun because I'm very used to what I'm doing and things are all lining up nicely. And so it's really just a place, it's like building a block tower. You just place in each block in place as you do each little section. So this is the really fun part. Direct ink drawing is always hardest at the start. It gets easier and easier as the drawing goes on. Hi, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope that was helpful. Drawing directly with ink without any pencil guidelines or underdrawing may sound a bit scary if we've never tried it, but it's really worth having a go at it. What we lose in accuracy, we more than make up for in the energy of our line work and a certain sort of movement in our drawing that we just don't get when we're just carefully tracing over our pencil. So give it a go, and if it's a way of drawing you would like to develop, then practice it, because we will get better at whatever we practice. If you want to do location sketching and sit in front of some grand building and just draw it directly with a pen, then practice doing that. And if you can't sit in front of a grand building to practice it, then at least do it from a reference photo and get used to how it feels and the sort of commitment with line that you have to make. And I hope that at least some of the things I've said in this video will be helpful. But of course, the most important thing is to have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.